Aho, mitakuye I say. Hello, all my relations. How y'all doing? My name is the Lucky Coyote, and today we are going to be reading some Brothers Grimm. So I hope y'all enjoy that. Had a little bit of an early day today, off of work because it's pouring rain. And most of the house is not built yet because we're starting on a new house. Hi, Suzu. How you doing? Anyways, we are going to start reading tonight with The Frog Prince. And for some reason, my mouse just likes to stop working for every few seconds. It's weird. Yeah, it's dark outside. Yeah, it is dark. Actually, I was thinking, telling the chat today that one of the things Suzu and I do is have this little thing between us where we will take the word "it's" and then the following word, and we will combine them together and make them smaller. So in order to state that, let me show you what I mean. So we will take the term. Whoa, first I gotta fix this. Jesus, that's massive. And make this text for y'all. Why is it so freaking huge? Holy crap. It's taking up most of my freaking screen. So we will take a text like, "It's wet." Where are you? Oh my God, I'm trying to do this. Yeah, Susan's doing it. Stark. What is the basis for this? Oh my God, I am moving this. And minimizing it. Move, minimize, move, make it smaller. Move, make it smaller. It is outside of the scope of the freaking screen. It's possessed. Yes, it's possessed. Why? Why are you doing this to me? Stupid box. All right, let me see now. We are just gonna destroy that then. And make a new one. Yes, I'm going to remove text. Then I'm going to make a new one. Actually, let's see now. Where is that at? Transform. Fit to screen. Set screen, center to screen. Center vertically, center horizontally. Okay. Scale to window. Okay, whatever. We're gonna do that. It's the end of the world and we know it. Text. Okay. So we are going to set the color as red because that's easily seeable. Alignment left, vertical tab. Defaults. Yes. Those are the defaults. Oh, wait. Crap, that set it to the defaults. Instead of making them the defaults. Okay. All right. Edit, transform, fit to screen. There we go. Okay, so we will take a text like "it's wet," and then we will drop the IT from it. and remove the space in between the two of them. Sway. Sway too hard. So right now, sweat outside. But I just think that's a cute little thing Suzu and I do between us. So we'll say it so we'll know what it means. And also like Stark. Like Stark out. So when we say that, meaning present tense, it is dark. But in saying it is or it's dark, we'll just say Stark. But I haven't heard anyone else doing that, so it's patent pending. But that's just a little bit of lore for y'all. Oh no, I'm giving away their secret. I know, all the secrets. But I thought Chad might find that amusing. Yes, we have lore. Aside from knowing each other IRL. Eventually we will combine and our lore will make coy wolves. Because, I mean, you're a wolf and I'm a coyote, so the product of that is coy wolves. We know each other? I would certainly hope so. If not, who are you? Anyway, thought you might find that all amusing. So we are going to get to her. You don't know who you are. It's okay. We'll figure it out together. Anyway, let's get to it. All right. Happy squeak. The Frog Prince by the Brothers Grimm. In olden time, when wishing was having, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful, but the youngest was so exceedingly beautiful that the sun himself, although he saw her very often, was surprised whenever she came out into the sunshine. Near the castle of this king lay a large and gloomy forest, and in the midst stood an old lime tree, beneath whose branches flowed a tranquil brook. Whenever it was very hot, the king's youngest daughter ran off into this wood, and sat down on the bank of the cool stream, and, when she felt dull, would often divert herself by throwing a golden ball up in the air and catching it, and this was her favorite amusement. Now one day it so happened that this golden ball, when the king's daughter threw it into the air, did not fall down into her hand, but on the grass, and then it rolled past her into a little fountain. The king's daughter followed the ball with her eyes, but it disappeared beneath the water, which was so deep that no one could see to the bottom. Then she began to lament, and to cry louder and louder, and, as she cried, a voice called out, "Why weepest thou, O king's daughter? Thy tears would melt even a stone to pity." And she looked around to the spot whence the voice came, and saw a frog stretching his thick, ugly head out of the water. "Ah, you old water paddler," said she, "was it you that spoke? I am weeping for my golden ball, which has slid away from me into the water." "Be quiet and do not cry," answered the frog. "I can give thee good advice, but what wilt thou give me if I fetch thy plaything up again?"
"What will you have, dear frog?" said she. "My dresses, my pearls and jewels, or the golden crown which I wear?"
The frog answered, "Dresses or jewels or golden crowns are not for me, but if thou wilt love me, and let me be thy companion and playfellow, and sit at thy table, and eat from thy little golden plate, and drink out of thy cup, and sleep in thy little bed, if thou wilt promise me all these, then I will dive down and fetch up thy golden ball."
"Oh, I will promise you all," said she, "if you will only get me my ball."
But she thought to herself, "What is this silly frog chattering about? Let him remain in the water with his equals. He cannot mix in society." Trap, how old is this girl? It doesn't say. But she is currently unmarried as the daughter of a king. So young. But the frog, as soon as he had received her promise, drew his head under the water and dived down. Presently he swam up again with the ball in his mouth and threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was full of joy when she again saw her beautiful plaything, and taking it up, she ran off immediately. "Stop, stop!" cried the frog. "Take me with thee. I cannot run as thou canst." But all his croaking was useless. Although it was loud enough, the king's daughter did not hear it, but, hastening home, soon forgot the poor frog, who was obliged to leap back into the fountain. The next day, when the king's daughter was sitting at table with her father and all his courtiers, and was eating from her own little golden plate, something was heard coming up the marble stairs. Splish, splash, splish, splash. And when it arrived at the top, it knocked at the door, and a voice said, "Open the door, thou youngest daughter of the king." So she rose and went to see who it was that called her. But when she had opened the door, she perceived the frog before her. Then she shut the door with great vehemence, and sat down at the table, looking very pale. But the king perceived that her heart was beating violently, and asked her whether it was a giant who had come to fetch her away, who stood at the door.
"Oh, no," answered she. "It is no giant, but an ugly frog."
"What does the frog want with you?" said the king.
"Oh, dear father, when I was sitting yesterday playing by the brook, my golden ball fell into the water, and this frog fetched it up again because I cried so much. But first, I must tell you, he pressed me so much that I promised him that he should be my companion. I never thought that he could come out of the water, but somehow he has jumped out, and now he wants to come in here."
GB22, how you doing? At that moment there was another knock, and a voice said, "King's daughter youngest, open the door. Hast thou forgotten thy promises made by the banks of the streamlet, beneath the beech shade? King's daughter youngest, open the door." Then the king said, "What have you promised that you must perform? Go and let him in." So the king's daughter went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in after her right up to her chair, and as soon as she was seated, the frog said, "Take me up." But she hesitated too long, that at last the king ordered her to obey, and as soon as the frog sat on the chair, he jumped on the table and said, "Now push thy plate near me,
that we may eat together." And she did so. But as everyone saw very unwillingly, the frog seemed to relish his dinner much, but every bit that the king's daughter ate nearly choked her, till at last the frog said, "I have satisfied my hunger, and feel very tired. Wilt thou carry me upstairs now into thy chamber, and make thy bed ready, that we may sleep together?" At this speech the king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog, and dared not touch him. And besides, he actually wanted to sleep in her own beautiful, clean bed. But her tears only made the king very angry, and he said, "He who helped you in the time of your trouble must not now be despised." So she took the frog up with 2 fingers, and put him in a corner of her chamber. But as she lay in her bed, he crept up to it, and said, "I am so very tired that I shall sleep well. Do take me up, or I will tell thy father." This speech put the king's daughter in a terrible passion, and, catching the frog up, she threw him with all her strength against the wall, saying, "Now will you be quiet, you ugly frog?" But as he fell, he was changed from a frog into a handsome prince with beautiful eyes, who after a little while became, with her father's consent, her dear companion and betrothed. Then he told her how he had been transformed by an evil witch, and that no one but himself would have had the power to take him out of the fountain, and that on the morrow they would go together into his own kingdom. Then they went to sleep. The next morning, as soon as the sun rose, a carriage drawn by 8 white horses, with ostrich feathers on their heads and golden bridles, drove up to the door of the palace, and behind the carriage stood the trusty Henry, the servant of the young prince. When his master was changed into a frog, trusty Henry had grieved so much that he had bound 3 iron bands round his heart, for fear it would break with grief and sorrow. But now that the carriage was ready to carry the young prince to his own country, the faithful Henry helped in the bride and bridegroom, and placed himself on the seat behind. Full of joy at his master's release, they had not proceeded far when the prince heard a crack as if something had broken behind the carriage. So he put his head out the window and asked Henry what was broken. And Henry answered, "It was not the carriage, my master, but a band which I bound round my heart when it was in such grief because you were changed into a frog." Twice afterwards on the journey there was the same noise, and each time the prince thought that it was some part of the carriage that had given way, but it was only the breaking of the bands which bound the heart of the trusty Henry, who was now free and happy. Thus ends the Frog Prince. So wait, the way to break the curse is to throw the frog at the wall? Apparently. Yep. Just let him into your room and then just yeet him. And also, immediately when he becomes changed back into a prince, the very next day, a carriage just shows up without being summoned at all from his kingdom to bring him into his kingdom by his faithful servant who was hanging about, I guess, very, very nearby. Oh, I didn't even put the title up. Well, we're going to start with the next title then. Stupid mouse, why are you dying? That's not it, though. So we're going to edit that.
Then marry him. Got it. Who was not stalking him. Yeah. Well, I mean, Henry wasn't stalking him. Why, mouse, are you stopping? My mouse is being stupid, chat. I don't know why. It's been plugged in constantly to get a battery. And now it will only function if it's fully plugged in. Stupid. Does that, which is why it's plugged in. Well, we need a longer USB-C cable then. So, this next story is a tale of one who traveled to learn what shivering meant. I know, odd title. Do we need a new one? Yeah, we need a new one because this one is way too short. Yeah, I know. This is a weird title. I've never heard this one. Gaming mouse or no. We don't need a new different mouse. We just need a USB-C. Yeah, the mouse is fine. It's just the USB-C cable is short. I need to plug it in. Anyway, let's begin A Tale of One Who Traveled to Learn What Shivering Meant by the brothers Grimm. A father had 2 sons, the elder of whom was forward and clever enough to do almost anything. But the younger was so stupid that he could learn nothing, and when the people saw him, they said, "Will thy father still keep thee as a burden to him?" So if anything was to be done, the elder had at all times to do it. But sometimes the father would call him to fetch something in the dead of night, and perhaps the way led through the churchyard or by a dismal place, and then he used to answer, "No, father, I cannot go there. I am afraid," for he was a coward. Or sometimes, of an evening, tales were told by the fireside which made one shudder, and the listeners exclaimed, "Oh, it makes us shiver." In a corner, meanwhile, sat the younger son listening, but he could not comprehend what was said, and he thought, "They say continually, 'Oh, it makes us shiver, it makes us shiver,' but perhaps shivering is an art which I cannot comprehend." One day, however, his father said to him, "Do you hear? You there in the corner, you are growing stout and big. You must learn some trade to get your living by. Do you see how your brother works? But as for you, you are not worth malt and hops." "Ah, father," answered he, "I would willingly learn something. What shall I begin? I want to know what shivering means, for of that I can understand nothing." The elder brother laughed when he heard this speech, and thought to himself, "Ah, my brother is such a simpleton that he cannot earn his own living. He who would be a woodcutter must stoop betimes." But the father sighed and said, "What shivering means you may learn soon enough, but you will never get your bread by that." Soon after the parish sexton came in for a gossip, so the father told him his troubles, and how that his younger son was such a simpleton that he knew nothing and could learn nothing. "Just fancy, when I asked him how he intended to earn his bread, he decided to learn what shivering meant. Oh, if that be all!" answered the sexton. "He can learn that soon enough with me. Just send him to my place, and I will soon teach him." The father was very glad, because he thought that it would do the boy good. So the sexton took him home to ring the bells. About 2 days afterwards, he called him up at midnight to go to the church tower to toll the bell. "You shall soon learn what shivering means," thought the sexton, and getting up, he went out. As soon as the boy reached the belfry and turned himself round to seize the rope, he saw upon the stairs, near the sounding hole, a white figure. "Who's there?" he called out, but the figure gave no answer, and neither stirred nor spoke. "Answer," said the boy, "or make haste off, if you have no business here tonight." But the sexton did not stir, so that the boy might think that it was a ghost. The boy called out a second time. "What are you doing here? Speak, if you are an honest fellow, or else I will throw you downstairs." The sexton said to himself, "That is not a bad thought." But he remained quiet, as if he were a stone. Then the boy called out for the third time, but it produced no effect. So, making a spring, he threw the ghost down the stairs, so that it rolled 10 steps and then lay motionless in a corner. Thereupon he rang the bell, and then, going home, he lay down without saying a word, and fell fast asleep. The sexton's wife waited some time for her husband, but he did not come home. So at last she became anxious, woke the boy, and asked him if he knew where her husband was, who had gone before him to the tower. "No," answered the boy, "but there was someone standing on the steps who would not give any answer, nor go away, so I took him for a thief and threw him downstairs. Go now and see where he is. Perhaps it may be he, but I should be sorry for it." The wife ran off and found her husband lying in a corner, groaning, with one of his ribs broken. She took him up and ran with loud cries to the boy's father and told him, "Your son has brought a great misfortune on us. He has thrown my husband down and broken his bones. Take the good-for-nothing fellow from our house." The terrified father came in haste and scolded the boy. "What do these wicked tricks mean? They will only bring misfortune upon you." "Father," answered the lad, "hear me. I am quite innocent. He stood there at midnight, like one who had done some evil. I did not know who it was, and cried 3 times, 'Speak, or be off!'" "Ah," said the father, "everything goes badly with you. Get out of my sight. I do not wish to see you again." "Yes, father, willingly. But wait one day. Then I will go out and learn what shivering means. I now understand one business which will support me." "Learn what you will," replied the father. "All is the same to me. Here are $50. Go forth with them into the world, and tell no man whence you came, or who your father is, for I am ashamed of you." "Yes, father, as you wish. If you desire nothing else, I shall esteem that very lightly." As soon as day broke, the youth put his $50 into a knapsack and went out upon the high road, saying continually, "Oh, if I could but shiver!" Presently a man came up, who heard the boy talking to himself, and as they were just passing the place where the gallows stood, the man said, "Do you see? There is the tree where 7 fellows have married the hempen maid, and now swing to and fro. Sit yourself down there and wait till midnight, and then you will know what it is to shiver." "Oh, if that be all," answered the boy,
I can very easily do that, but if I learn so speedily what shivering is, then you shall have my $50 if you come again in the morning."
Then the boy went to the gallows, sat down, and waited for evening. And, as he felt cold, he made a fire. But about midnight the wind blew so sharp that, in spite of the fire, he could not keep himself warm. The wind blew the bodies against one another, so that they swung backwards and forwards, and he thought, "If I am cold here below the fire, how must they freeze and tremble above?" So his compassion was excited, and contriving a ladder, he mounted, and unloosening them one after another, he brought down all 7. Then he poked and blew the fire, and sat them around that they might warm themselves. But as they sat without moving, their clothing caught fire. So he said, "Take care of yourselves, or I will hang all of you up again." The dead heard not, and silently allowed their rags to burn. This made him so angry that he said, "If you will not hear, I cannot help you, but I will not burn with you." So he hung them up again in a row, and, sitting down by the fire, he soon went to sleep. The next morning the man came, expecting to receive his $50, and asked, "Now do you know what shivering means?" "No," he answered. "How should I know? Those fellows up there have not opened their mouths, and were so stupid that they let their old rags on their bodies be burnt." Then the man saw that he should not carry away the $50 that day, so he went away, saying, "I never met with such an one before." The boy also went on his way, and began again to say, "Ah, if only I could but shiver, if I could but shiver." A wagoner, walking behind, overheard him, and asked, "Who are you?" "I do not know," answered the boy. The wagoner asked again, "What do you do here?" "I know not." "Who is your father?" "I dare not say." "What is it you are continually grumbling about?" "Oh," replied the youth, "I wish to learn what shivering is, but nobody can teach me." "Cease your silly talk," said the wagoner. "Come with me, and I will see what I can do for you." So the boy went with the wagoner, and about evening time they came at an inn, where they put up for the night. And while they were going into the parlor, he said, quite aloud, "Oh, if I could but shiver, if I could but shiver." The host overheard him, and said, laughingly, "Oh, if that is all you wish, you shall soon have the opportunity." "Hold your tongue," said his wife. "So many impudent people have already lost their lives. If it were a shame and sin to such beautiful eyes, that they should not see the light again." But the youth said, "If it were ever so difficult, I would at once learn it. For that reason I left home." And he never let the host have any peace till he told him that not far off stood an enchanted castle, where any one might soon learn to shiver, if he would watch there 3 nights. The king had promised his daughter in marriage to whomever would venture, and she was the most beautiful young lady that the sun ever shone upon. And he further told him that inside the castle there was an immense amount of treasure, guarded by evil spirits, enough to make any one free, and turn a poor man into a very rich one. Many had, he admitted, already ventured into this castle, but no one had ever come out again. The next morning this youth went to the king and said, "If you will allow me, I wish to watch 3 nights in the enchanted castle."
The king looked at him, and because his appearance pleased him, he said, "You may make 3 requests, but they must be inanimate things you ask for, such as you can take with you into the castle." So the youth asked for a fire, a lathe, and a cutting board. The king let him take these things by day into the castle, and when it was evening the youth went in and made himself a bright fire in one of the rooms, and, placing his cutting board and knife near it, he sat down upon his lathe. "Ah, if I could but shiver," said he, "but even here I shall never learn." At midnight he got up to stir the fire, and, as he poked it, there shrieked suddenly in one corner, "Meow, meow! How cold I am!" "You simpleton!" he exclaimed. "What are you shrieking for? If you are so cold, come and sit down by the fire and warm yourself." As he was speaking, 2 great black cats sprang up to him with an immense jump and sat down one on each side, looking at him quite wildly with their fiery eyes. When they had warmed themselves for a little while, they said, "Comrade, shall we have a game of cards?" "Certainly," he replied, "but let me see your paws first." So they stretched out their claws, and he said, "Ah, what long nails you have got! Wait a bit, I must cut them off first." And so saying, he caught them up by their necks and put them on his board, and screwed their feet down. "Since I have seen what you are about, I have lost my relish for a game at cards," said he, and instantly killing them, threw them away into the water. But no sooner had he quieted these 2, and thought of sitting down again by his fire, than there came out of every hole and corner black cats and black dogs, with glowing chains, continually more and more, so that he could not hide himself. They howled fearfully, and jumped upon his fire, and scattered it about as if they would extinguish it. He looked on quietly for some time, but at last, getting angry, he took up his knife and called out, "Away with you, you vagabonds!" And chasing them about, a part ran off, and the rest he killed and threw into the pond. As soon as he returned, he blew up the sparks of his fire again, and warmed himself, and while he sat, his eyes began to feel very heavy, and he wished to go to sleep. So looking round, he saw a great bed in one corner, in which he laid down. But no sooner had he closed his eyes than the bed began to move of itself, and travelled all around the castle. "Just so," said he, "only better still," whereupon the bed galloped away as if 6 horses pulled it up and down steps and stairs, till at last, all at once, it overset, bottom upwards, and laid upon him like a mountain. But up he got, threw pillows and mattresses into the air, and saying, "Now he who wishes may travel," laid himself down by the fire, and slept till day broke. In the morning the king came, and seeing the youth lying on the ground, he thought the spectres had killed him, and that he was dead. So he said, "It is a great misfortune that the finest men are thus killed." But the youth, hearing this, sprang up, saying, "It is not come to that with me yet." The king was very much astonished, but still very glad, and asked him how he had fared. "Very well," replied he. "As one night has passed, so also may these other 2. Soon after he met his landlord, who opened his eyes when he saw him. I never thought to see you alive again, said he. Have you learnt now what shivering means? No, said he. It is all of no use. Oh, if anyone would but tell me. The second night he went up again into the castle, and sitting down by the fire began his old song. If I could but shiver. When midnight came, a ringing and rattling noise was heard, gentle at first, and louder by degrees. Then there was a pause, and presently, with a loud outcry, half a man's body came down the chimney and fell at his feet. "Holloa!" he exclaimed. Only half a man answered that ringing. That is too little. Then the ringing began afresh, and a roaring and howling was heard, and the other half fell down. "Wait a bit," said he. "I will poke up there first." When he had done so and looked round again, the two pieces had joined themselves together, and an ugly man was sitting in his place. "I did not bargain for that," said the youth. "The bench is mine." The man tried to push him away, but the youth would not let him, and giving him a violent push, set himself down in his old place. Presently more men fell down the chimney, one after the other, who brought 9 thigh bones and 2 skulls, which they set up, and then they began to play at 9-pins. At this the youth wished also to play, so he asked whether he might join them. "Yes, if you have money." "Money enough," he replied, "but your balls are not quite round." So saying, he took up the skulls, and, placing them on his lathe, turned them round. "Ah, now you will roll well," said he. "Holla! Now we will go at it merrily." So he played with them, and lost some of his money, but as it struck 12, everything disappeared. Then he laid down and went to sleep quietly. On the morrow the king came for news, and asked him how he had fared this time. "I have been playing 9-pins," he replied, "and lost a couple of dollars." "Have you not shivered?" "No." "I have enjoyed myself very much, but I wish someone would teach me that." On the third night he sat down again on his bench, saying in great vexation, "Oh, if only I could shiver." When it grew late, 6 tall men came in bearing a coffin between them. Ah, said he, "that is surely my little cousin, who died 2 days ago." And beckoning with his finger, he called, "Come, little cousin, come." The men set down the coffin upon the ground, and he went up and took off the lid, and there lay a dead man within. And as he felt the face, it was as cold as ice. "Stop a moment," he cried. "I will warm it in a trice." And stepping up to the fire, he warmed his hands, and then laid them upon the face, but it remained cold. So he took up the body, and sitting down by the fire, he laid it on his lap, and rubbed the arms that the blood might circulate again. But all this was of no avail, and he thought to himself, "If 2 lie in a bed together, they warm each other." So he put the body in the bed, and covering it up, laid himself down by its side. After a little while the body became warm, and began to move about. "See, my cousin," he exclaimed, "have I not warmed you?" But the body got up and exclaimed, "Now I will strangle you." "Is that your gratitude?" cried the youth. "Then you shall get in your coffin again."
And taking it up, he threw the body in and made the lid fast. Then the 6 men came in again and bore it away.
"Oh, dearie me," said he, "I shall never be able to shiver if I stop here all my lifetime."
At these words in came a man who was taller than all the others, and looked more horrible, but he was very old, and had a long white beard. "Oh, you wretch!" he exclaimed. "Now thou shalt learn what shivering means, for thou shalt die."
"Not so quick," answered the youth. "If I die, I must be brought to it first."
"I will quickly seize you," replied the ugly one.
"Softly, softly, to be not too sure. I am as strong as you, and perhaps stronger."
"That we will see," said the ugly man. "If you are stronger than I will let you go. Come, let us try." And he led him away through a dark passage to a smith's forge. Then, taking up an axe, he cut through the anvil at one blow down to the ground. "I can do that, and still better," said the youth, and went to another anvil, while the old man followed him and watched him with his long beard hanging down. Then the youth took up an axe, and splitting the anvil in one blow, wedged the old man's beard in it. "Now I have you! Now death comes upon you!" And, taking up an iron bar, he beat the old man until he groaned, and begged him to stop, and he would give him great riches. So the youth drew out the axe, and let him loose. Then the old man, leading him back into the castle, showed him 3 chests full of gold in a cellar. "One share of this," said he, "belongs to the poor, another to the king, and the third to yourself." And just then it struck 12, and the old man vanished, leaving the youth in the dark.
"I must help myself out here," said he,
and, groping round, he found his way back to his room, and went to sleep by the fire. The next morning the king came and inquired, "Now have you learnt to shiver?"
"No,"
replied the youth.
"What is it?" "My dead cousin came here, and a bearded man who showed me a lot of gold down below, but what shivering means no one has showed me."
Then the king said, "You have won the castle, and shall marry my daughter."
"This is all very fine," replied the youth, "but I still don't know what shivering means."
So the gold was fetched, and the wedding was celebrated. But the young prince, for the youth was a prince now, notwithstanding his love for his bride and his great contentment, was still continually crying,
"If I could but shiver! If I could but shiver!"
At last it fell out in this wise. One of the chambermaids said to the princess, "Let me bring in my aid to teach him what shivering is." So she went to the brook which flowed through the garden, and drew up a pail of water full of little fish. And, at night, when the young prince was asleep, his bride drew away the covering and poured the pail of cold water and the little fish over him, so they slipped in all about him. Then the prince woke up directly, calling out,
"Oh, that makes me shiver! Dear wife, that makes me shiver! Yes, I know what shivering means."
Thus ends a tale of one who traveled to learn what shivering meant. I do find these stories somewhat humorous. Given some of the ridiculous circumstances that they come across. But, I mean, this is, early 1800s Germany. Almost anime worthy title there. Yeah, recently. Recent anime being like 6 pages long. Or I should say like 6 sentences long. Shut up, OneDrive. I don't want you. Go away. This next story is The Wolf and the 7 Little Goats. Oops, sorry. Not the Suzu. There we are. Fixed. The Wolf and the 7 Little Goats by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time there lived an old goat who had 7 young ones, whom she loved as every mother loves her children. One day she wanted to go into the forest to fetch some food. So, calling her 7 young ones together, she said, "Dear children, I am going away into the wood. Be on your guard against the wolf, for if he comes here, he will eat you all up, skin, hair, and all. He often disguises himself, but you may know him by his rough voice and his black feet." The little goats replied, "Dear mother, we will pay great attention to what you say. You may go away without any anxiety." So the old one bleated and ran off, quite contented upon her road. Not long afterwards, somebody knocked at the hut door and called out, "Open, my dear children. Your mother is here and has brought you each something." But the little goats perceived from the rough voice that it was the wolf, and so they asked, "We will not undo the door. You are not our mother. She has a gentle and loving voice, but yours is gruff. You are a wolf." So the wolf went to a shop and brought a great piece of chalk, which he ate, and by that means rendered his voice more gentle. Then he came back, knocked at the hut door, and called out, "Open, my dear children. Your mother has come home, and has brought you each something." But the wolf had placed his black paws upon the window-sill, so the goats saw them, and replied, "No, we will not open the door. Our mother has not black feet. You are a wolf." So the wolf went to a baker and said, "I have hurt my foot. Put some dough on it." And when the baker had done so, he ran to the miller, saying, "Strew some white flour upon my feet." But the miller, thinking he was going to deceive somebody, hesitated, till the wolf said, "If you will not do it at once, I will eat you." This made the miller afraid, so he powdered his feet with flour. Such are men. Now the villain went for the 3rd time to the hut, and knocking at the door, called out, "Open to me, my children. Your dear mother is come, and has brought with her something for each of you out of the forest." The little goats exclaimed, "Show us first your feet, that we may see whether you are our mother." So the wolf put his feet up on the window-sill, and when they saw that they were white, they thought it was all right, and undid the door. But who should come in? The wolf. They were terribly frightened, and tried to hide themselves. One ran under the table, the 2nd got into the bed, the 3rd into the cupboard, the 4th into the kitchen, the 5th into the oven, the 6th into the wash-tub, and the 7th into the clock case. But the wolf found them all out, and did not delay, but swallowed them all up one after another, Only the youngest one, hid in the clock case, he did not discover. When the wolf had satisfied his appetite, he dragged himself out, and, lying down upon the green meadow under a tree, went fast asleep. Soon after, the old goat came home out of the forest. Ah, what a sight she saw! The hut door stood wide open. The table, stools, and benches were overturned. The wash tub was broken to pieces, and the sheets and pillows pulled off the bed. She sought her children, but could find them nowhere. She called them by name, one after the other, but no one answered. At last, when she came to the name of the youngest, a little voice replied, "Here I am, dear mother, in the clock case." She took her out, and heard how the wolf had come and swallowed all the others. You cannot think how she wept for her poor little ones. At last she went out in all her misery, and the young goat ran by her side, and when they came to the meadow, there lay the wolf under the tree, snoring so that the boughs quivered. She viewed him on all sides, and perceived that something moved and stirred about in his body.
"Ah, mercy," thought she, "should my poor children, whom he has swallowed for his dinner, be yet alive?"
So saying, she ran home and fetched a pair of scissors and a needle and thread. Then she cut open the monster's hairy coat, and had scarcely made one slit before one little goat put his head out, and, as she cut further, out jumped one after another, all 6, still alive and without any injury, for the monster, in his eagerness, had gulped them down quite whole. There was a joy. They hugged their dear mother, and jumped about like tailors keeping their wedding day. But the old mother said, "Go and pick up at once some large stones, that we may fill the monster's stomach while he lies fast asleep." So the 7 little goats dragged up in great haste a pile of stones, and put them in the wolf's stomach, as many as they could bring. And then the old mother went, and, looking at him in a great hurry, saw that he was still insensible, and did not stir. So she sewed up the slit. When the wolf at last woke up, he raised himself upon his legs, and, because the stones which were lying in his stomach made him feel thirsty, he went to a brook in order to drink. But as he went along, rolling from side to side, the stones began to tumble about in his body, and he called out, what rattles against my poor bones? Not little goats, I think, but only big stones." And when the wolf came to the brook, he stooped down to drink, and the heavy stones made him lose his balance, so that he fell and sunk beneath the water. As soon as the 7 little goats saw this, they came running up, singing aloud, "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" And they danced for joy around their mother by the side of the brook. Thus ends The Wolf and the 7 Little Goats. That's what you get for not chewing your food. Indeed. Yeah, never swallow goats whole. Oh God, they took my freaking kidney. It's okay, Charlie. Charlie! This next story is entitled Faithful John. So just remember that, when you need to perform surgery, all you have to do is just wait until they're asleep. And, they totally don't feel anything, like cutting open their stomach. Faithful John by the Brothers Grimm.
Once upon a time there lived an old king who fell very sick, and thought he was lying upon his deathbed. So he said, "Let faithful John come to see me." This faithful John was his affectionate servant, and was so called because he had been true to him all his lifetime. As soon as John came to the bedside, the king said, "My faithful John, I feel that my end approaches, and I have no other care than about my son, who is still so young, and that he cannot always guide himself aright. If you do not promise to instruct him in everything he ought to know, and to be his guardian, I cannot close mine eyes in peace." Then John answered, "I will never leave him. I will always serve him truly, even if it cost me my life." So the old king was comforted, and said, "Now I can die in peace. After my death, you must show him all the chambers, halls, and vaults in the castle, and all the treasures which are in them. But the last room in the long corridor you must not show him, for in it hangs the portrait of the daughter of the king of the Golden Palace. If he sees her picture, he will conceive a great love for her, and will fall down in a swoon, and on her account undergo great perils. Therefore you must keep him away." The faithful John pressed his master's hand again in token of assent, and soon after the king laid his head upon the pillow and expired. After the old king had laid in his grave, the faithful John reflected to the young king all that his father had said upon his deathbed, and declared, "All this I will certainly fulfill. I will be as true to you as I was to him, if it cost me my life." When the time of mourning was past, John said to the young king, "It is now time for you to see your inheritance. I will show you your paternal castle." So he led the king all over it, upstairs and downstairs, and showed him all the riches and all the splendid chambers. Only one room he did not open, containing the perilous portrait, which was so placed that one saw it directly the door was opened, and, moreover, it was so beautifully painted that one thought it breathed and moved. Nothing in all the world could be more lifelike or more beautiful. The young king remarked, however, that the faithful John always passed by one door, so he asked, "Why do you not open that one? There is something in it," he replied, "which will frighten you." But the king said, "I have seen all the rest of the castle, and I will know what is in there." And he went and tried to open the door by force. The faithful John pulled him back and said, "I promised your father before he died that you should not see the contents of that room. It would bring great misfortunes both upon you and me." "Oh, no," replied the young king. "If I do not go in, it will be my certain ruin. I should have no peace night nor day until I had seen it with my own eyes. Now I will not stir from the place till you unlock the door." Then the faithful John saw that it was of no use talking, so, with a heavy heart and many sighs, he picked the key out of the great bunch. When he had opened the door, he went in first, and thought he would cover up the picture that the king should not see it, but it was of no use. For the king stepped upon tiptoes and looked over his shoulder, and as soon as he saw the portrait of the maiden, which was so beautiful and glittered with precious stones, he fell down on the ground insensible. The faithful John lifted him up and carried him to his bed, and thought with great concern, "Mercy on us! The misfortune has happened. What will come of it?" And he gave the young king wine until he came to himself. The first words he spoke were, "Ah, who is that beautiful picture?" "That is the daughter of the king of the Golden Palace," was the reply. "Then," said the king, "my love for her is so great that if all the leaves on the trees had tongues, they should not gainsay it. My life is set upon the search for her. You are my faithful John. You must accompany me." The trusty servant deliberated for a long while how to set about this business, for it was very difficult to get into the presence of the king's daughter. At last he bethought himself of a way, and said to the king, "Everything that she has around her is of gold. Chairs, tables, dishes, bowls, and all the household utensils. Among your treasures are 5 tons of gold. Let one of the goldsmiths in your kingdom manufacture vessels and utensils of all kinds therefrom, all kinds of birds, and wild and wonderful beasts, such as will please her. Then we will travel with these and try our luck." Then the king summoned all his goldsmiths, who worked day and night until many very beautiful things were ready. When all had been placed on board a ship, the faithful John put on merchant's clothes, and the king likewise, so that they might travel quite unknown. Then they sailed over the wide sea, and sailed away until they came to the city where dwelt the daughter of the king of the Golden Palace. The faithful John told the king to remain in the ship and wait for him. "Perhaps," said he, "I shall bring the king's daughter with me. Therefore take care that all is in order, and set out on the golden vessels, and adorn the whole ship." Thereupon John placed in a napkin some of the golden cups, stepped upon land, and went straight to the king's palace. When he came into the castle yard, a beautiful maid stood by the brook, who had 2 golden pails in her hand drawing water, and when she had filled them and had turned round, she saw a strange man, and asked who he was. Then John answered, "I am a merchant," and opening his napkin, he showed her its contents. Then she exclaimed, "Oh, what beautiful golden things!" And setting the pails down, she looked at the cups one after another, and said, "The king's daughter must see these. She is so pleased with anything made of gold that she will buy all these." And taking him by the hand, she led him in, for she was the lady's maid. When the king's daughter saw the golden cups, she was much pleased, and said, "They are so finely worked that I will purchase them all." But the faithful John replied, "I am only the servant of a rich merchant. What I have here is nothing in comparison to those which my master has on his ship, than which is nothing more delicate or costly has ever been worked in gold." Then the king's daughter wished to have them all brought, but he said, "It would take many days, and so great is the quantity that your palace has not halls enough in it to place them round." Then her curiosity and desire was still more excited, and at last she said, "Take me to the ship. I will go myself and look at your master's treasure." The faithful John conducted her to the ship with great joy, and the king, when he beheld her, saw that her beauty was still greater than the picture had represented, and thought nothing else but that his heart would jump out of his mouth. Presently she stepped on board, and the king conducted her below, but the faithful John remained on deck by the steersman, and told him to unmoor the ship and put on all the sail he could, that it might fly as a bird in the air. Meanwhile the king showed the princess all the golden treasures, the dishes, cups, bowls, the birds, the wild and wonderful beasts. Many hours passed away while she looked at everything, and in her joy she did not remark that the ship sailed on and on. As soon as she had looked at the last, and thanked the merchant, she wished to depart. But when she came on deck, she perceived that they were upon the high sea, far from the shore, and were hastening with all sail. "Ah!" she exclaimed in a fright. "I am betrayed! I am carried off and taken away in the power of a strange merchant! I would rather die!" But the king, taking her by the hand, said, "I am not a merchant, but a king, thine equal in birth. It is true that I have carried thee off, but that is because of my overwhelming love for thee. Dost thou know that when I first saw the portrait of thy beauteous face, that I fell down in a swoon before it?" When the king's daughter heard these words, she was reassured, and her heart was inclined towards him, so that she willingly became his bride. While they thus went on their voyage on the high sea, it happened that the faithful John, as he sat on the deck of the ship playing music, saw 3 crows in the air, who came flying towards them. He stopped playing and listened to what they were saying to each other, for he understood them perfectly. The first one exclaimed, "There he is, carrying home the daughter of the king of the Golden Palace." "But he is not home yet," replied the second. "But he has her," says the third. "She is sitting by him in the ship." Then the first began again and exclaimed, "What matters that? When they go on shore, a fox-colored horse will spring toward him, on which he will mount, and as soon as he is on it, will jump up with him into the air, so that he will never again see his bride." The second one said, "Is there no escape?" "Oh, yes, if another gets on quickly and takes the firearms which are on the holster out, and with them shoots the horse dead, then the young king will be saved. But who knows that? And if anyone does know it and tells him, such an one will be turned to stone from toe to the knee." Then the second spoke again. "I know still more. If the horse should be killed, the young king will not retain his bride. For when they come into the castle, a beautiful bridal shirt will lie there upon a dish, and seem to be woven of gold and silver. But it is nothing but sulphur and pitch, and if he puts it on, it will burn him to his marrow and bones." Vamic City, Australia. Thank you for following. Then the third crow asked, "Is there no escape?" "Oh, yes," answered the second. "If someone takes up the shirt with his gloves on and throws it into the fire so that it is burnt, the young king will be saved. But what does that signify? Whomever knows it and tells him will be turned to stone from his knee to his heart." Then the third crow spoke. "I know still more. Even if the bridal shirt be consumed, still the young king will not retain his bride. For if, after the wedding, a dance is held,
While the young queen dances, she will suddenly turn pale and fall down as if dead. And if someone does not raise her up and take 3 drops of blood from her right breast and throw them away, she will die. But whoever knows that and tells it will have his whole body turned to stone, from the crown of his head to the toe of his foot. He was just from a friend. It doesn't mean anything. Oh, all right. Sorry, that's the, not acronym, what is it? Designation for Australia? After the crows had thus talked with one another, they flew away, and the trusty John, who had perfectly understood all they had said, was from that time very quiet and sad. For if he concealed from his master what he had heard, misfortune would happen to him, and if he told him all, he must give up his own life. But at last he thought, I will save my master, even if I destroy myself. As soon as they came on shore, it happened just as the crow had foretold, and an immense fox-red horse sprang up. "Capital," said the king. "This shall carry me to my castle." And he tried to mount, but the faithful John came straight up, and swinging himself quickly on, drew the firearms out of the holster, and shot the horse dead. Then the other servants of the king, who were not on good terms with the faithful John, exclaimed, "How shameful to kill the beautiful creature, which might have borne the king to the castle!" But the king replied, "Be silent, and let him go. He is my very faithful John, who knows the good he may have done." Now they went into the castle, and there stood a dish in the hall, and the splendid bridal shirt lay in it, and seemed nothing else than gold and silver. The young king went up to it, and wished to take it up, but the faithful John pushed him away, and, taking it up with his gloves on, bore it quickly to the fire and let it burn. The other servants thereupon began to murmur, saying, "See, now he is burning the king's bridal shirt." But the young king replied, "Who knows what good he has done? Let him alone. He is my faithful John." Soon after, the wedding was celebrated, and a grand ball was given, and the bride began to dance. So the faithful John paid great attention, and watched her countenance. All at once she grew pale, and fell as if dead to the ground. Then he sprang up hastily, raised her, and bore her to a chamber, where he laid her down, kneeled beside her, and, drawing the 3 drops of blood out of her right breast, threw them away. As soon as she breathed again, she raised herself up, but the young king had witnessed everything, and, not knowing why the faithful John had done this, was very angry, and called out, "Throw him into prison!" The next morning, the trusty John was brought up for trial, and led to the gallows. And as he stood upon them, and was about to be executed, he said, "Every one condemned to die may once before his death speak. Shall I also have that privilege?" "Yes," answered the king, "it shall be granted to you." Then the faithful John replied, "I have been unrighteously judged, and have always been true to you." And he narrated the conversation of the crows which he had heard at sea, and how, in order to save his master, he was obliged to do all he had done. Then the king cried out, "Oh, most truly trusty John, pardon, pardon, lead him away." But the trusty John had fallen down at the last word, and was turned into stone. At this event both the king and the queen were in great grief, and the king asked, "Ah, how wickedly have I rewarded his great fidelity!" And he had the stone statue raised up and placed in his sleeping chamber near his bed,
and as often as he looked at it, he wept and said, "Ah, how could I bring you back to life again, my faithful John?" After some time had passed, the queen bore twins, 2 little sons, who were her great joy. Once, when the queen was in church, and the 2 children at home playing by their father's side, he looked up at the stone statue full of sorrow, and exclaimed with a sigh, "Ah, how could I restore you to life, my faithful John?" At these words the stone began to speak, saying, "Yes, you can make me alive again, if you will bestow on me that which is dearest to you." The king replied, "All that I have in the world I will give up to you." The stone spake again, "If you, with your own hand, cut off the heads of both your children and sprinkle me with their blood, I shall be brought to life again." The king was terrified when he heard that he must himself kill his 2 dear children, but he remembered his servant's great fidelity, and how the faithful John had died for him, and drawing his sword, he cut off the heads of both his children with his own hand. And as soon as he had sprinkled the stone with blood, the life came back to it, and the trusty John stood again alive and well before him, and said, "Your faith shall not go unrewarded." And taking the heads of the 2 children, he set them on again, and anointed their wounds with their blood, and thereupon they healed again in a moment, and the children sprang away and played as if nothing had happened. Now the king was full of happiness, and as soon as he saw the queen coming, he hid the faithful John and both the children in a great cupboard. As soon as she came in, he said to her, "Have you prayed in the church?" "Yes," she answered, "but I thought continually of the faithful John, who has come to such misfortune through us." Then he replied, "My dear wife, we can restore his life again to him, but it will cost us both our little sons, whom we must sacrifice." The queen became pale and was terrified at heart, but she said, "We are guilty of his life on account of his great fidelity." Then he was very glad that she thought as he did, and going up to the cupboard, he unlocked it, and brought out the children and the faithful John, saying, "God be praised, he is saved, and we have still our little sons." And then he told her all that had happened. Afterwards they lived happily together to the end of their days. Thus ends Faithful John.
So always listen to talking statues. It's totally not a hallucination that will try to get you to murder your children. Oh, thank you. Susie brought me pizza. That's so sweet of her. Brought us pizza, I should say. And a thing which she's putting... Oh, never mind. That's stuff I got earlier today. Anyway. Yeah, apparently we got selected for... What is it? The Nielsen ratings. So we get to wear nice little trackers which tell us, all the media we're watching. Because, because we totally watch anything other than YouTube, Netflix, Crunchyroll, VTubers. Hulu. Rarely some Disney. Anyway, this next story is entitled The Musicians of Bremen. There we are. So let us begin. The Musicians of Bremen by the Brothers Grimm. A certain man had an ass which had served him faithfully for many long years, but whose strength was so far gone that at last it was quite unfit to work. So his master was thinking how much he could make of the skin, but the ass, perceiving that no good wind was blowing, ran away along the road to Bremen. There, thought he, I can be a town musician. When he had run some way, he found a hound lying by the roadside, yawning like one who was very tired. What are you yawning for now, you big fellow? Asked the ass. Ah, replied the hound, because every day I grow older and weaker. I cannot go any more to the hunt, and my master has well nigh beaten me to death, so that I look to flight, and now I do not know how to earn my bread. Well, do you know, said the ass, I'm going to Bremen to be a town musician there. Suppose you go with me and take a share in the music. I will play on the lute, and you shall beat the kettle drums. The dog was satisfied, and off they set. Presently they came to a cat sitting in the middle of the path, with a face like 3 rainy days. Now then, old shaver, what has crossed you? Asked the ass. How can one be merry when one's neck has been pinched like mine? Answered the cat. Because I am growing old, and my teeth are all worn to stumps, and because I would rather sit by the fire and spin than run after mice. My mistress wanted to drown me, and so I ran away. But now good advice is dear, and I do not know what to do. Go with us to Bremen. You understand nocturnal music, so you can be a town musician. The cat consented, and went with them. The 3 vagabonds soon came near a farmyard, where upon the barn door the cock was sitting crowing with all his might. You crow through marrow and bone, said the ass. What do you do that for? That is the way I prophesy fine weather, said the cock. But because grand guests are coming for the Sunday, the housewife has no pity, and has told the cookmaid to make me into soup for the morrow. And this evening my head will be cut off. Now I am crowing with a full throat as long as I can. Ah, but you redcomb, replied the ass, rather come away with us. We are going to Bremen, to find something better than death. You have a good voice, and if we make music together, we will have full play. The cock consented to this plan, and so all 4 travelled on together. They could not, however, reach Bremen in one day, and at evening they came into a forest, where they met to pass the night. The ass and the dog laid themselves down under a large tree. The cat and the cock climbed up into the branches, but the latter flew right to the top, where he was most safe. Before he went to sleep, he looked all round the 4 quarters, and soon thought he saw a little spark in the distance. So, calling his companions, he said they were not far from a house, for he saw a light. The ass said, If it is so, we had better get up and go further, for the pasturage here is very bad. And continued the dog, Yes, indeed, a couple of bones with some meat on would also be very acceptable. So they made haste towards the spot where the light was, which shone now brighter and brighter, until they came to a well-lighted robber's cottage. The ass, as the biggest,
went to the window and peeped in.
"What do you see, Grey Horse?"
asked the cock.
"What do I see?" replied the ass. "A table laid out with savory meats and drinks, with robbers sitting around enjoying themselves." "That were the right sort of thing for us," said the cock.
"Yes, yes, I wish we were there," replied the ass. Then these animals took counsel together how they should contrive to drive away the robbers, and at last they thought of a way. The ass had to place his forefeet upon the window ledge, the hound got on his back, the cat climbed up upon the dog, and lastly the cock flew up and perched upon the head of the cat. When this was accomplished, at a given signal they commenced together to perform their music. The ass brayed, the dog barked, the cat mewed, and the cock crew, and they made such tremendous noise and so loud that the panes of the windows were shivered. Terrified at these unearthly sounds, the robbers got up with great precipitation, thinking nothing less than some spirits had come, and fled off into the forest. The four companions immediately sat down at the table and quickly ate up all that was left, as if they had been fasting for 6 weeks. As soon as the 4 players had finished, they extinguished the light, and each sought for himself a sleeping place, according to his nature and custom. The ass laid himself down upon some straw, the hound behind the door, the cat upon the hearth near the warm ashes, and the cock flew up upon a beam which ran across the room. Weary with their long walk, they soon went to sleep. At midnight, the robbers perceived from their retreat that no light was burning in their house, and all appeared quiet. So the captain said, "We need not to have been frightened into fits." And, calling one of the band, he sent him forward to reconnoiter. The messenger, finding all still, went into the kitchen to strike a light, and, taking the glistening, fiery eyes of the cat for live coals, he held a lucifer match to them, expecting it to take fire. But the cat, not understanding the joke, flew in his face, spitting and scratching, which dreadfully frightened him. So he made for the back door, but the dog who lay there sprung up and bit his leg, and as soon as he limped upon the straw whereupon lay the ass, it gave him a powerful kick with his hind foot. This was not all, for the cock, awakening at the noise, stretched himself, and cried from the beam, "Cock-a-doodle-doo! Cock-a-doodle-doo!" Then the robber ran back as well as he could to his captain, and said, "Ah, my master, there dwells a horrible witch in the house, who spat on me and scratched my face with her long nails, and then before the door stands a man with a knife, who chopped at my leg, and in the yard there lies a black monster, who beat me with a great wooden club, and besides all, upon the roof sits a judge who called out, 'Bring the knave up, do!' So I ran away as fast as I could." After this, the robbers dared not again go near their house, but everything prospered so well with the 4 town musicians of Bremen that they did not forsake their situation, and there they are to this day, for anything I know. Thus ends the musicians of Bremen. One has to wonder how how an ass can play the lute. Find that fairly interesting. Or are they just going to make a ton of noise as opposed to music? This next story is entitled The 12 Brothers.
apparently Suzu just broke a nail by accidentally biting into it while eating chicken. Chicken wings are worth it. Thank you. But she's getting her nails done tomorrow, so crisis averted. Anyway, let's begin. The 12 Brothers by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time there lived happily together a queen and a king who had 12 children, all boys. One day the king said to his consort, "If the 13th child whom you are about to bring into the world should be a girl, then shall the 12 boys die, that their riches may be great, and that the kingdom may fall to her alone." He then ordered 12 coffins to be made, which were filled with shavings, and in each a pillow was placed, and, all of them having been locked up in a room, he gave the key thereof to the queen, and bade her tell nobody about the matter. But the mother sat crying the whole day long, so that her youngest child, who was always with her, and whom she had named Benjamin, said to her, "Mother dear, why are you so sorrowful?" "My dearest child," she replied, "I dare not tell you." But he let her have no peace until she went and unlocked the room and showed him the 12 coffins filled with shavings. Then she said, "My dearest Benjamin, these coffins your father has had prepared for yourself and your 11 brothers. For, if I bring a girl into the world, you will all be killed together and buried in them." And, as she wept while she spoke these words, the sun comforted her, saying, "Do not cry, dear mother. We will help ourselves and go away." But she said, "Go with your 11 brothers into the woods, and let one of you climb into the highest tree which is to be found, and keep watch, looking towards the tower of the castle here. If I bear a little son, I will hang out a white flag, and you may venture home again. But if I bear a little daughter, I will hang out a red flag, and then flee away as quickly as you can, and God preserve you. Every night I will arise and pray for you, in winter that you may have a fire to warm yourselves, and in summer that you may not be melted with the heat." Soon after she gave her blessings to all her sons, and they went away into the forest. Each kept watch in turn, sitting upon the highest oak tree, and looking towards the tower. When 11 days had passed by, and it came to Benjamin's turn, he perceived a flag hung out, but it was not the white, but the red flag, which announced that they all must die. As the brothers heard this, they became very angry and said, "Shall we suffer death on account of a maiden? Let us swear that we will avenge ourselves. Wherever we find a maiden, her red blood shall flow." Thereupon they went deeper into the forest, and in the middle, where it was most gloomy, they found a little charmed cottage standing empty. And they said, "Here we will dwell, and you, Benjamin, as you are the youngest and the weakest, shall stop here and keep house while we go out to fetch meat." So they set forth into the forest and shot hares, wild fawns, birds, and pigeons, and what else they could find. These they brought home to Benjamin, who cooked them for them to appease their hunger. In this little cottage they lived 10 years together, and the time passed very quickly. The little daughter, whom their mother, the queen, had borne, was now grown up. She had a kind heart, was very beautiful, and always wore a golden star upon her brow. Once, when there was a great wash, she saw 12 boys' shirts hanging up, and she asked her mother,
To whom do these 12 shirts belong? For they are much too small for my father.
Then she answered with a heavy heart,
My dear child, they belong to your 12 brothers.
The maiden replied,
Where are my 12 brothers? I have never yet heard of them.
The queen answered,
God only knows where they are. They have wandered into the wide world.
Then she took the maiden, and unlocking the room, showed her 12 coffins with the shavings and pillows.
These coffins, said she, were ordered for your brothers, but they went away secretly before you were born.
And she told her how everything had happened. Then the maiden said,
Do not cry, dear mother. I will go forth and seek my brothers.
And taking the 12 shirts, she set out at once straight into the great forest. All day long she walked on, and in the evening she came to the charmed house into which she stepped. There she found a young lad, who asked her,
Whence dost thou come, and whither goest thou?
And he stood astonished to see how beautiful she was, and at the queenly robes she wore, and the star upon her brow. Then she answered,
I am a king's daughter, and am seeking my 12 brothers, and will go as far as heaven is blue until I find them.
And she showed him the 12 shirts which belonged to them. Benjamin perceived at once that it was his sister, and he said,
I am Benjamin, thy youngest brother.
At his words she began to weep for joy, and Benjamin wept also, and they kissed and embraced one another with the greatest affection. Presently he said,
Dear sister, there is one terrible condition we have agreed together, that every maiden whom we shall meet shall die, because we were obliged to leave our kingdom on account of a maiden.
Then the maiden replied,
I will willingly die, if I can by that means release my 12 brothers.
No, answered he,
thou shalt not die. Hide thyself under this tub until our 11 brothers come home, with whom I shall then be untied.
She did so, and when night came, the others returned from hunting, and their dinner was made ready. And as they sat at the table, eating, they asked, What is the news? Benjamin said,
Do you not know?
No, they answered, when he spoke again. You have been in the forest, and I have stopped at home, yet I know more than you. Tell us directly, they exclaimed. He answered, First promise me that you will not kill the first maiden who shall meet us. Yes, we promise, they exclaimed. She shall have pardon. Now tell us at once. Then he said, Our sister is here. And, lifting up the tub, the king's daughter came from beneath, looking most beautiful, delicate, and gentle in her royal robes, and with the golden star upon her brow. The sight gladdened them all, and, falling upon her neck, they kissed her and loved her with all their hearts. Now she stopped at home with Benjamin and helped him in his work, while the 11 others went into the wood and caught wild animals, deer, birds, and pigeons for their eating, which their sister and brother took care to make ready. The sister sought wood for the fire, and for the vegetables which she dressed, and put the pots on the fire, so that their dinner was always ready when the 11 came home. She also kept order in the cottage, and covered the beds with beautiful white and clean sheets, and the brothers were always contented, and they all lived in great unity. One day, when the brother and sister had made ready a most excellent meal, and they were all assembled, they sat down and ate and drank, and were full of happiness. But there was a little garden belonging to the charmed house,
in which stood 12 lilies, which are also called student lilies. And the sister, thinking to give her 12 brothers a pleasure, broke off the 12 flowers, intending to give each of them one. But as she broke off the flowers, at the same moment the 12 brothers were changed into 12 crows, and flew off into the forest, and at the same moment the house and garden both disappeared. Thus the poor maiden was alone in the wild forest, and as she looked around, an old woman stood near her, who said, "My child, what hast thou done? Why dost thou not leave the 12 white flowers? They were thy brothers, who are now changed into crows." Then the maiden asked with tears, "Is there no means of saving them?" "There is but one way in the whole world," said the old woman, "but that is so difficult that thou canst not free them. Thou must be dumb for 7 years. Thou mayest not speak, nor laugh, and if thou speakest but a single word, even if it wants but 1 hour of the 7 years, all will be in vain, and thy brothers will die at that single word." Then the maiden said in her heart, "I know for certain that I shall free my brothers." And she went and sought a lofty tree, and, sitting upon it, she spun, and neither spoke nor laughed. Now it happened once that a king was hunting in the forest, who had a large greyhound, which ran to the tree on which the maiden sat, and, springing round, barked furiously. So the king came up and saw the beautiful girl with the golden star upon her brow, and was so enchanted with her beauty that he asked her if she would become his bride. To this she gave no answer, but slightly nodded with her head. So the king, mounting the tree himself, brought her down, and, placing her upon his horse, carried her home. Then the wedding was celebrated with great pomp and joy, but the bride neither spoke nor laughed. After they had lived contentedly together 2 years, the king's mother, who was a wicked woman, began to slander the young queen, and said to the king, "This is a common beggar girl whom you have brought home with you. Who knows what impish tricks she practiced at home? If she be dumb and not able to speak, she might still laugh once, but they who do not laugh have a bad conscience." The king would not at first believe it, but the old woman persisted in it so long, and accused the queen of so many wicked things, that the king at last let himself be persuaded, and she was condemned to die. Now a great fire was kindled in the courtyard in which she was to be burnt, and the king, standing above at a window, looked on with tearful eyes, because he still loved her so much. And now she was bound to the stake, and the fire began to lick her clothing with its red tongues. And just at that time the last moment of the 7 years expired. Then a whirring was heard in the air, and 12 crows came flying by, and sank down to the earth, and as they alighted on the ground, they became her 12 brothers whom she had freed. They tore away the fire from around her, and extinguishing the flames, set their sister free, and kissed and embraced her. And now, as she could open her mouth and speak, she told the king why she was dumb, and why she never laughed. And the king was highly pleased when he heard she was innocent, and they all lived together in great happiness to the end of their lives. Thus ends the 12 brothers. Siblings. Family.
I wouldn't want to be 11 on my brother.
Not in that sense.
It doesn't say.
It's an expression. It doesn't mean what you think it means.
Help me, brother. I'm stuck.
There is a step in front of that.
Yeah, for an actual step, brother, yeah, but for those.
Listen. While they are royalty, and they try to keep their bloodlines pure.
Keep it in the family.
Yeah, not that far in the family. At least not in most Western traditions. In Egyptian tradition, there's been a couple instances of that. Some Roman as well. But with that chat, I am gonna go get some dinner real quick before it gets too cold. So we're gonna find somebody to raid into.
Maybe.
And then I'll probably be back later on tonight to play some Clair Obscure.
Arrivals.
Or Rivals. Probably Clair Obscura, because I like that. Let's see now. Whom should we raid into? Oh, Bagsterd is doing Frightening Friday, just chatting. Scary videos, Carrion, the scariest horse game. Hopefully it's not Uma Musume.
No, it's Porcelain Maid.
Yeah, Porcelain Maid is playing that. So we're going to raid into Bagsterd for a little bit. I want to thank y'all for coming out. And I will see you next time. Probably later on tonight. Goodbye for now.